declaring a national emergency.
New York has the greatest need in terms of numbers.
These families, these lost souls.
The federal government is distributing more than 8 million N95 respirators.
Social distancing is evident almost everywhere.
This number of new claims for unemployment benefits is truly unprecedented.
We can't let the economy collapse.
We have a bipartisan agreement on the largest rescue package in American history.
China doesn't want the real story to be told.
The Chinese regime's propaganda arm is trying to shift the blame.
Blame on the United States.
It's not going to happen, not as long as I'm president.
It's not a Chinese virus. It's not a Wuhan virus. This is the CCP virus.
Welcome to Zooming In Coronavirus Special. I'm Simone. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has tested positive for the CCP virus or the coronavirus and is self-isolating at home. Meanwhile, the United States is quickly becoming the new epicenter of the global outbreak. That is, if we trust the numbers coming from China. New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo said the curve in New York is looking to apex in 21 days, while new hotspots are emerging in other cities such as Chicago, Detroit, and New Orleans. In Washington, Congress just passed a $2 trillion emergency relief bill. Today, my guest is Tom Del Beccaro, author of The Divided Era and former chairman of California Republican Party. Tom, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me on again.
Okay. The House just passed a $2 trillion relief package, and now it's on its way to the White House. The market reacted to the package, to the prospect of the bill being passed, and rallied 17% in the last 3 days. So do you think the bill gave enough confidence to the market?
Well, I do think the bill calmed the markets. The markets had a huge sell-off. There was a lot of computer selling, and it gave a lot of people the jitters. And the question was just how bad the economic fallout will be. And the market discounted by 30% among those jitters and because of computer trading. I think we've reached a approximate level of calmness, but that really depends on whether this package works. If it turns out not to work, I think you can see further market erosion. If it turns out to work, I think you'll find the market recover over time, but we won't get back to its prior level, I don't think, for months on end, if not a year.
So what do you think of the package?
Well, the package, of course, is government-centric, and we need to keep in mind that governments don't sustain healthy economies, jobs do. And what I mean by government-centric is that the relief is coming in several forms, but it's mainly direct payments to businesses that qualify, to individuals that qualify, and hoping that they will turn around and take that money and create demand. That doesn't work long term. It may help in the short term, but historically, what has helped a weakened economy or a confidence-stricken economy is to lower rates and regulations so that investors see opportunity ahead. The problem with one-time government payments, or even if there are a couple of payments, is people know them to be short-term and don't make long-term plans. So it's better not to get a business loan than it is to get a long-term tax rate reduction. We'll have to see how this package works. I still believe that we need to lower rates and regulations for the long-term health of the economy.
I think one major function of this bill is to just really use the government's money to carry the business over this crisis. I mean, just infuse cash into their system so they can pay bills. They don't have to lay off people during this period, right? It's not so much.
Yeah, that is a targeted benefit of the bill, but also historically, huge government deficits have led to inflation, which erodes gains, but also it makes businesses reliant or individuals reliant on that. When for long-term growth, like you saw, this is the difference between the Obama administration and the Trump administration prior to this bill. The Obama administration relied on government transfers more than tax reductions. The Trump administration relied on tax reductions and regulatory reductions, not transfers up until now, and the economy responded. Will it respond enough in this particular case? No, it's not. And the reason why I don't think it will is, first of all, there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to have gone out of business for good. It's estimated up to 3% of American restaurants may never be able to open their doors again. Remember, the hospitality industry works on very tight margins. And there's a lot of businesses that won't even be eligible for the loan because they're closing their doors. Well, in order to get doors reopened under different names or different businesses, you have to make investment attractive again. And you don't do that with a government loan per se. You do it with lower rates and regulations.
Okay. Lower rates and regulation, that's like a permanent measure. I think at this time of crisis, my understanding is that they just really want to cover people during this period. But let me ask you another question. Do you think this bill intends to help both big businesses and small businesses? Do you think the little guy get enough help?
Well, again, there's 350 some odd billion dollars that small businesses would be eligible to get a loan. And what they would have to do is prove that this goes directly related to opening up and maintaining employees. That sounds good, but the question is, what a number of small businesses are closed forever because of this crisis? And then there's the issue of them applying for it. It's not quite the easy process it sounds. Whereas if the government told them tomorrow, your tax rate is not going to be 22%, but your tax rate to reopen will be 15%, a tax holiday like I proffered or offered up in my recent Epic Times article, then that's much easier for them to count on, and it's a more permanent solution.
Okay, so why would the small business go permanently out of business if they receive cash, if they can keep people employed during this period?
Well, my point is the closing that has occurred in various spots all over the country to varying degrees for in excess of 3 or 4 or 5 weeks will result in some small businesses closing for good. Many restaurants cannot go 6 weeks without revenue.
But if they receive cash from the government, even if they don't have businesses, even if they don't have customers, but they can still have the people employed, right? They can still keep the people employed.
Well, the government program offering cash is helpful for those businesses that are able to reopen. And many businesses will be able to reopen. But there are some businesses, estimates of 3% in the restaurant industry, for instance, simply won't be able to reopen and therefore won't even be eligible for the program. The question is, how do you encourage business startups long term? Government loans are extremely difficult and don't sustain an economy. What sustains an economy is the incentive to open the business, and that means low enough tax and regulatory rates so that they're not obstructing new business startups. That's where we're going to need to be focused long term. That's why the Trump administration's efforts at tax reform wound up growing the economy in some cases twice as much as during the Obama administration.
I know you are all for tax reduction. Okay, but right now, if we reduce tax even more, where does the money come from?
Okay, you ask a good question because this package includes government loans and spending of up to $2 trillion. That is directly added to the deficit. If you do tax reduction, in the short term, you also get additions to the deficit. However, if the economy grows, you're better off getting more revenues through that growth over time. The question isn't whether a particular program will increase the deficit on day one, the question also is, what if you do nothing? If we did nothing right now, business losses would pile up and revenues over time would probably drop over $1 trillion or $2 trillion. But if you act by lowering rates and restoring business activity, then you shorten that downturn. So that's why when the Carter administration didn't reduce tax rates and revenues were falling, they were going to keep falling. Same was true at the end of the Obama administration. But by cutting taxes, what happened was you shortened that downturn.
Okay. Let me ask you a specific question regarding this package. The Boeing CEO said Thursday that the company could reject any aid package that requires the government taking an equity stake in the company. What do you make of it? Do you think he has a point?
I'm very proud that the Boeing CEO said that. Under no terms should the American government be taking stakes in private business. That's akin to socialism. And at what stake and what are the equitable thoughts here? Should we have 20%, 10%? What if we need more? What if they need more? No, that's the wrong way to go. That's a terrible program. If government wants to be the lender of last resort, as the Fed seems to want to do by buying up debt, that's one thing. But the notion that the American government should somehow be equity holders in big business is a horrible idea, short and long term.
Okay. Now this bill has passed. What do you see ahead economically?
Well, I think it will give the market the ability to recover. It will be that being the stock markets. They were too jittery before, and I think this will calm them. As far as the economy as a whole, there's no question that in the short term, it will provide some benefits. I don't think we'll return to the same level of growth as we saw before this, however, because too many businesses were harmed and went out of business, and the recovery won't be as even as I think the administration or others would hope it to be.
I actually have another question. So for those, for example, for those small businesses and stuff, restaurants and stuff, cutting tax is obviously good for them, but that's down the road. Their current problem is they don't have cash to pay for people, to keep people employed. So they need that cash to carry them through this 1 month or 6 weeks. So that's what I think the package is for. Cutting tax is solving another problem.
I do think the package, which includes $367 billion in loans to small businesses, does have the potential to give them a tax infusion, especially since that loan would be forgivable if they remain in business. Those are for businesses capable of reopening. What still needs to be seen is the total number of businesses that don't reopen. And then what do you do under those circumstances? Because that implies that the economy would have shrunk virtually the same amount as the number of businesses that go out of business, or at least they're correlated. A stronger policy would include more than just short-term infusion, but also would include tax and regulatory reductions so that investors put their money at risk again long term.
So you are thinking this package is good, but more needs to be done. Tax needs to be reduced.
Yes, the package is a good and interesting start, but long-term economies are sustained by jobs, not by government payments.
One last question. Do you think we need to smash the curve right now and then open up the country, or do you think we should open up the country step by step while we try to contain the virus?
The United States is big geographically and economically, and of course its population. I don't think there's a single policy that is smart for the entire country. I think we need to be more targeted. You saw Andrew Cuomo of New York think we need to be more flexible recently. The president thinks we need to be more flexible. If there are areas of the country where there's no outbreak, I don't think it's smart that they should be shut down for the same period of time that Los Angeles, a place I think will have a coming outbreak, is closed down. We need to be flexible and not treat all 50 states and every square inch within those 50 states the same.
That's it for today's coronavirus special. You are watching Zooming In with Simone Gao. Please also download our podcast from Spotify, iTunes, and Google. And be sure to come back on Monday.